Hey everybody. I hope everyone's had a good, horrible, nasty week in Boone. I appreciate the snow, but not when we have to go to school in it. Anyways, this was a good module, I thought. I really enjoy discussing disability, and like disability rights and studies and everything because little fun fact about myself is my sister actually has Down syndrome. So, and my mom and now my dad both work with adults with special needs, and so it's something I've always kind of been around. And so when I see coverage like on this kind of thing, it's it's just fun to see because as multiple of these articles talked about, we don't really have a lot of literature on disability studies. So whenever I come across it, I'm very interested in it. I would like to start with sorry, I got my articles pulled up. The Tour de Queer Crip Feminist Politics of Food. Tongue twister. I really thought that the kind of idea about like the politics of food, I thought this article made like a lot of good points. Sorry, I gotta zoom in. I don't got my glasses. I thought it made a lot of good points, and I thought it was really interesting to look at food and how it kind of intersects with people with disability. And that was one thing that it didn't really expand on that much, but the article Pride Feelings did mention how they would go to LGBTQ plus like celebrations, and some of the things that they didn't really accommodate for were foods with people with dietary needs. So this was the first one I read, so I kind of just now made that connection. So but I was thinking as I was reading it, because I got down to the rules. I can't think of who wrote it now. I can't find it in my book. But there were the rules that were like, don't eat foods that were made in a lab, like by a person that's like ready for surgery. Don't eat food that your grandparents wouldn't recognize as food. Don't eat food pretending to be other foods. And so I did realize very quickly, like, these are all a little problematic, especially like the I think it was the first rule, that don't eat food that your grandparents wouldn't recognize, because the article mentioned that that's like kind of rooted in racism. And I was like, like, I wouldn't think about that. Like, if I took, and I can't really think of any foods off the top of my head other than like if I went to my grandparents, not even my grandparents, but like my great grandparents even, and showed them a plate of sushi, they'd probably be like, ew, what is that? Another thing is that there is food that I see some people eat, and I'm even like, I don't know what that is. Like, it kind of just looks like mush. It's kind of how I feel about just mashed potatoes. So I don't know what that is. But so like and like the whole point of it being like that your grandparents wouldn't recognize. My grandpa right now is, I think, early 80s, so he's like 82. So there's a lot of things that he knows is food. But like my great grandparents and my great great grandparents, I don't know. That's kind of like almost ageist, I feel like, because it's like, I know some people whose grandparents are in their 50s. That's not that old, so I don't know. But my biggest problem with these rules that came across, if I can find it, is, gosh, I've got them here somewhere, and I promise I do. God, I am so sorry. It had something to do with foods being, it had something to do with like this attitude towards a food being rooted in transphobia. And I was just a little confused on that, because I thought that was just kind of a large jump. Okay, right here. It's on the 5th page, 108. Says, second rule is based on an assumption that appearing to be something that one is not always suspect and potentially dangerous, an assumption about food echoed in statements that purport to justify violent attacks against transgender people. So I thought, personally, that was a little bit of a jump, because there's the binary between gender, is that there's only two, and then it's men and women, and then anything else is just wrong. So I can understand what the author of this article is saying is that it kind of perpetuates a binary, but I'm also thinking that it's food. And so I can understand, like, if something doesn't look right, then it's wrong. But I'm wondering, I think what my point is that I'm wondering if the person who came up with these rules, like, had that idea that it was, like, deeply rooted transphobia. And I might be wrong. But that was just kind of my first takeaway about it. I was just kind of confused. So if anyone has like an easier way to explain that to me, it would be greatly appreciated, because I just kind of had a hard time with that stance. I also do want to talk about the intersection between disability and genocide. I thought that was really interesting, because I think what the individual of this article, and I don't want to pronounce his name because I feel like I'm definitely going to pronounce it wrong. When you scroll down and you look at the picture of him, I don't think one would assume that this man has any form of disability. I didn't, at least. Like, I thought this was, like, the picture of, like, the author of the article. So I thought that it was really interesting, because it goes to show that it said that countries don't want disabled people, right? And so I feel like typically people think that they don't want people with physical disabilities because they're going to be a problem. But when you look at this man, and they do talk about how he, like, has trouble walking and, like, breathing and, like, laying down with, like, the conditions of his, like, bed, I think. He has a lot of issues with that. So I wouldn't assume that this man is physically disabled by any means. But it just kind of goes to show that it doesn't, if you have that label, disability, like, then you're seen as wrong. So I thought that was a really interesting take for this article. One last note that I wanted to make. It was something on that note. I don't know. I did think that the Pride Feelings article was, it was a really interesting article. I don't want to say that I didn't agree with a lot of the things in the article. It's just that I think I just don't understand them. So I had a hard time reading that one and kind of grappling with the ideas that the author presented, because I don't identify as what they do. So I don't understand a lot of the viewpoints and a lot of the perspectives, viewpoints, same thing. Any of the hardships that they've been faced with. I don't have any kind of basis for comparison for that. So when I was reading that article, I was thinking, well, like, I don't know about that, and yada yada yada. But I also have to remember, like, that's not me. And I think that's a point, kind of the disability studies, critical disability studies, is that you can read these things and you don't have to relate to them. And that's a point in, like, any studies. If it's feminism, or if it's, like queer studies or disability studies, if it's any of that, then whether you relate to it or not doesn't really matter. It's a point of exposing yourself to it and understanding that this is what people go through. So I don't want to say that I didn't agree with anything, because personally, I didn't, because I have no ground to. So, anyways, I ran out of time really quickly, so I hope everyone has enjoyed kind of what I had to say. I hope everyone enjoyed the articles, and I hope everyone has a good couple of weeks. Bye!